Hey builders, I'm Ryan. Welcome back to Not a Model. This episode is all about tools. I started out like most. I bought a big toolkit bundle from one of the major suppliers. Nothing wrong with the tools I bought. They're high quality. They came at a fair price. Unfortunately, the bundle it included things that I find I don't use, and it was missing some of the things that I had to supplement later that I use all the time. So while I spent not as much on the bundle initially, I think by the time I got done with all the added tools, I've gone over. Let's get to the things that I use all the time, or at least often enough to justify the purchase of those. And let's start with a compressor, something you'll need kind of constantly in building an aluminum aircraft. You don't need a monster compressor. Most of the builders that I've talked to get away with somewhere between a 20, 25 gallon home unit, runs on 110. I went with this number. It's a Cobalt. Its brand doesn't really matter, but this one is really quiet. It's enough to run all the tools that I have, including the paint gun that I use for priming all of my parts. You can see mine is here in the mechanical room, so it's separated from the workshop area, gives some extra quietness. I also have a way of running my hoses, so the ends of the hoses are kind of downstream, so any condensation in the lines either runs back into the tank or into now my regulator and my filtering and my dehydration, my oil removal solution. The next step down the line from my regulator, so I keep this regulator at 90 for running most of the air tools, the drills and die grinder and such. You can see it moves down into this second regulator. This is for my rivet gun. And I make that one separate because I still like drilling with one hose at 90 PSI and riveting something else at, in the 30s and 40s. Next to this, I have a chart that I use to display, to set that pressure, to get into a nice rhythm of riveting as you change between shorter and longer rivets or from -3s to -4s. Instead of varying my timing, how long I hold the button, I change the pressure. And that makes it easier so I can keep the same rhythm and come up with good result. I also then move downstream to this Cleveland air manifold or air distribution that uses these great little thin hoses. They're easy to carry around, they don't kink. Stay away from the coiled hoses, they just make a mess of things. So let's talk about the tools I use all the time, starting with the air tools. So this is the pneumatics squeezer system. It is a combination hydraulic and pneumatic, so it's air in to the regulator. You dial the pressure here to change what diameter rivets you're working with. Not the length. The length does not matter. It really is using -3s. So that would be about 40 PSI. And if you're using the -4s, you go up to about 75 PSI. You step on the foot pedal, which is still on the pneumatic side, so it's air hoses to here, and then it's hydraulic from this little piston over to the very light, very easy to use swivelly bit that is your squeezer. So accepts standard yokes. This is the long run one. I've got a variety that I use and we'll go over, but swap out these same little dies and sets for universal versus the flush rivets. So this thing is about my favorite tool. Squeeze whenever you can squeeze, and if you can't squeeze, then move on to bucking. But that's been a godsend. I use a 3X rivet gun. I don't know the brand, doesn't really matter, I guess. It's got the quick change spring for swapping out the heads. So here's the mushroom head. The double offset comes in handy now and then. This one's one of my favorites. It is for back riveting. It's got a really heavy duty spring, so it really holds those skins together nicely as you're back riveting to a plate. This other one is a little bit of magic. So it really is like a bucking bar with a hole in it. So a big heavy chunk here. You put your dimple dies in there And then on this side, same thing, dimple die goes in there. This goes in your rivet gun. So I've used this a few times when, for example, I need to upsize a hole from a -3 rivet to a -4, but I've got to re-dimple the skin for that 1/8 inch flush rivet. So, you know, this on one side, rivet gun comes in on the other side and re-squeezes that hole. So handy stuff. Don't use it very often, but love it when I do. And then the air drill comes in quite handy as well. Again, got these little swivelly things, keep your hoses out of the way. I love it that it's small and it's lined up nicely, very narrow, fits in tight places. The downside is they're really loud. So, you know, wear your earmuffs. But I use it. This one does allow variable speed. Some of them don't. Some of them are just on off. This one allows for some finessing. I go back and forth between air and electric as needed. So those are it for like the ones I actually spent a decent money on. After that, I went cheap. So one of them, because the RV10 doesn't have a whole lot of pop rivets, I didn't want the $500 pop rivet gun. This was like $60 on Amazon, so it works just fine. Air hose comes in. You do have the replaceable tips for the different size pins. Your pins all fall back into this container for you know, disposing of them. If I was building a plane that was more pop rivets than anything else, I might spring for a bigger one, but for the 10, that one is plenty. All right, that's enough for the pneumatic tools. Let's move on to hand tools. So this one is obviously an electric drill. I choose DeWalt because I've got a ton of batteries and other tools. It doesn't really matter, just get a decent quality. Don't use that old drill that you've had since college that you've, you know, dropped off the ladder through every home improvement project you've ever worked on. You want these things to be nice and straight. You don't want the drill bit out there to be all wobbly because you've kind of wrecked your drill. So go pick up a new one. Some of the other hand tools that I use are these little vice grips with the dimple dies built in. So they're already just welded on there. This is the 3/32. It's in orange, and then the green is the 1/8. As I mentioned before, I color code my tools. So my countersinks and my bits are orange, and my rivets are the right, you know, match the color for the rivet to all of this, and I'm never making the wrong size hole for the right size rivet. So that makes it way easier to stay organized. The other tool that's pretty slick along the same lines is this vice grip that's got the plates welded to it. So, you know, if you need to grab something and bend it, kind of like that a poor man's brake, that's great. Where I love this thing is on the trailing edge of your elevator trim tabs. They come as kind of a U-shaped, and you need to make them more of a V-shaped. So just putting this along the edge got everything to be just the right shape. It worked out great. Another handy one for rivets themselves is this Knipex pliers. Most pliers open and close, you know, like a jaws of an alligator, whereas the Knipex, they're straight, so you can see the action there. It's flat inside of there instead of having the ridges, so you don't chew up your aluminum. But this is great for that little reaching into those tiny little spots and squeezing out a rivet. There's plenty of mechanical advantage there to give it a squeeze. And the other squeezer and occasionally dimpler that I use is this Cleveland tool. That's from their website. It's got this cam in here, which gives you this nice mechanical advantage. You don't have to be a gorilla to use this thing. It's, you know, the adjustable for the length rivet that you're working with. Your dies just go right in there, and your yoke fits right on there, and those same pins go in there that the pneumatics squeezer has. So love this little guy for areas that I can't get at with the pneumatic one. These yokes, I do a variety of these. This one, I kind of cheated. It's got a flat area. You don't need the die on the other side. But you can see I actually modified it with a grinder, carved off a bunch and then notched it. So in those areas, like the trailing edges of your elevators, it comes down to where there's, you know, rivet, and they get so close to each other, they're practically touching inside. It's okay to squeeze this one, but when you put the one in from the other side, there's no room. so I had to notch that to make it work. So when you're using your air gun for bucking, you need the bucking bars to produce that shop head. So what I like using is these tungsten things. They are so incredibly heavy and dense. Do not drop this on your foot. You will not have a good day. This one is short and fat. This one's longer and skinnier, but they weigh about the same. What I've done though is I 3D printed, this is TPU material, so it's flexible, it's a little bit a give to it, but it fits perfectly on the bucking bar on both edges, and it's got a surface inside that creates that shop head, and the thickness of this makes just that right thickness of the head. And then because this is flexible, it doesn't damage the skin like a corner of a tungsten bar does, making those little outie marks in your skin. So I love these little things. They're just easy to do on CAD and print them out on flexible material. The other thing is when you're reaching in and you're blind inside the plane, you can get that rivet anywhere in here and it's not going to slip off because it's going to catch that riv. Your bucking bar doesn't just go flying off the piece. So that's my go-to. I drive almost everything with that one. If I'm bucking, occasionally you'll need this one for tighter spots. And then again, on those trailing edges, sometimes you need to use this little wedge to get in there. This is also a nice heavy tungsten. In the deburring category, I really just use 2 for most things. On the skins, this is just a cheap old electric screwdriver. It is straight, charges with USB-C, so pretty slick there. The bit is from Cleveland, I believe, just got a little hole in it. It does not take much effort to do your skins. Just walk down the skin, and just a little touch on each one. You don't have to push very hard. You're just knocking off that burr, not taking a lot of material with it. And then this I use great on the skins and other surfaces. You can see it's got the V-shaped deburring attachment to it. You can pull the collar down and replace this with other kinds if you like other kinds, but I like the V. It does both sides of the skin at the same time. And then you can actually pull this down and lengthen this as well to get the right angle at things. So this is pretty slick. That handles pretty much all the deburring I do. One last little section I want to talk about for tools is just gadgets. What are the other little things that make your life easier? Obviously, a nice tray to hold all your dies together, color-coded and organized. You can make your own in a drill press if you like, but I like this one, so I picked it up. For unriveting, if you mess up a rivet, especially with the 470 head, that rounded head, this is a handy little tool. Put it in your drill. It's got the cup-shaped dome on there that holds you centered on the head, but it also has a depth setting, so you only drill through the head of the rivet. You're not getting into the material below, so this is pretty handy. Use this for now pulling out my rivets, removing the laser cut parts for the assemblies I've already made, unfortunately. This little gadget, also from Cleveland, is for those trailing edge wedges. So they're different angle for the RV14, and this side is the 10. But you're putting this in there for the wedge, and then allowing you to countersink those holes accurately at the right angles. Another fun one is this little gadget for doing your nut plates. It helps you find those holes and mark those and drill the holes accurately without having to just keep sort of using a nut plate as a template. And finally, Cleveland tight fit dimpling fixture. So this one is if you are really trying to have to dimple a hole in a tight area, you can actually just take these 3 screw holes, mount this to the edge of your bench so it's hanging off the end. And then in your rivet gun, take your 3/32 die, and that fits in there. So you can squeeze that hole. It's just one of those, you don't need it very often, but sometimes it is the only tool that works. That's all I've got. Thank you for watching. Please leave in the comments any tools that you have in your bag of tricks that you didn't see here. I'm always on the lookout for something that's gonna save time or make the plane, a better product. So cheers, thanks for watching.